scripture that they try to use besides the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter and the 12th verse, to try to push that cunningly devised fable of Satan being cast out of heaven. This is the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter. We're going to start the first verse. We're not going to be able to go through the whole chapter as far as breaking it down. So what we'll do is, Lord's will, we're going to go into another show we'll go through Revelation, the 12th chapter, and we'll go through the complete breakdown of it. But right now we're going to hit certain points, just to make the point, so to speak. So this is Revelation 12 and 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now this is the scripture that they use, that the Roman Catholic Church uses, to try to say that this is talking about Mary, and then that's why they have the crowns around her and the 12 stars and all that stuff, and the glow and all this. This is all bullshit. Alright, this is not talking about Mary. This is talking about the nation of Israel. When you read the book of Jeremiah 6 and 2, it says that that Israel is comparable to a comely woman. Alright, the sun represents wisdom, the moon represents understanding. It was under her feet because the nation of Israel eventually was going to get the full understanding of the truth after Yahushua, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, was put to death, and he came back and opened the minds of the disciples. And there's more, it goes in more depth, but we're going to leave it at that, so in the interest of time. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. The 12 stars represent the nation of Israel. And she being with child cried. Now this is talking about going back to during the time of the Roman Empire, which at the time when this was written during the time of the Roman Empire. It says, and she being with child, meaning that the nation of Israel was catching hell. They were in travail. Just like when somebody is crying and they're in pain, they grab their loins, they cry. That's why the Lord even spoke about, do men give birth? I'm just roughly paraphrasing it. Do men give birth? So why do I see every man's hands on his loins? Because when a woman gives birth, she grabs her stomach. She's like all in pain. So then men do that too when they're in travail, in pain. So it says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Because at that time Israel knew that the Messiah was coming. Israel knew that once he came, that they were going to be delivered, but the only difference was that they thought that it was coming at that particular time. That's why it says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. That's why the disciples, after Yahushua was crucified and went into the grave and came back out, went to the Father and came back to the disciples, they said, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom unto Israel again? You see, because they were waiting for that. It says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. Now this is where people start getting crazy at, okay? Because they read this and behold a great red dragon, and they're like looking at a mystical image of a dragon floating through the air with wings on his back, just with all kind of crazy crowns and horns coming out of it. But that's not what it's talking about. Even though when the Apostle John saw this on the island of Patmos, he seen what he wrote down. He actually seen that, but it represented something, and we're going to go into it. It says, and behold a great red dragon. This great red dragon represented the whole empire of the so-called white man. Alright, it represented his whole empire. Today they're known as the EU, or the European Union, and NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, through America and through his whole empire. Back then it was the same thing, but back then they were known under different names. But during the time of John, the red dragon was the Roman Empire, because that was the particular head that was ruling at that time. It says, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Alright, it says, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. So now I said that his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. Right, so now in order to really go into that and break that down, we're just gonna go into a real quick precept here in the book of Matthew, the 11th chapter, and the 11th verse, and it says this. It says, "Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there has not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force." All right. So even going back during the time of when Yahushua was first born, Herod, the devil, the Edomite, which the Romans were Edomites too, but Herod being the devil and the Edomite, what he did was he was persecuting Israel back then, because he knew through the spirit, through the magi's that were back then, the wise men, that the Messiah and the King of Israel was born. So he wanted to put him to death. So he took, and being that the magi's or the wise men did not come back to him because they were warned not to come back to him, what he did was because it took like a period of about 2 years. So what he did was all the children from 2 years and under, the male children, he took and he killed them. He gave the order and the decree to kill them. So in the hopes that he would kill the Messiah. That's why it says that from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. But also, even more than that, you had the Roman Empire at the time that was persecuting Israel even beyond that. Alright? That's why when you go back to Revelation, the 12th chapter, it says, "And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born." And that was Herod. And he wanted to devour the child as soon as it was born, because after like what period of 2 years, he gave that order to kill all the male children in that area. But he didn't succeed because the Most High didn't allow him to succeed, and it was a reason behind that. All right. So now when it speaks about the stars of heaven, that's talking about Israel, and there's many scriptures to go into in the Bible that breaks down that Israel is talking about the stars, or that Israel are the stars. You know, that they shall be as the stars of heaven for multitude. You know, but like I said, in the time of in the matter of or the interest of time, we're going to continue on, and like I said, we'll come back another day, Lord's will, and break down this whole book of Revelation 12. Alright, and she brought forth a man child. This is dealing with Yahushua, and the she is talking about Mary, but it's also talking about the nation of Israel. You know, because the nation of Israel was ready to be delivered at that time. Okay, so it's really talking about the nation of Israel, but you could use Mary as the point, because Mary did bring Yahushua forth through Joseph. All right, so Joseph and Mary did have sex. Joseph skeeted up in her, and Yahushua was born. All right, of the sperm of Joseph. All right. And she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with the rod of iron, which was the judgment that was given to him of the Most High, and her child was caught up into the Most High, into his throne. Right, so that's why he's on the right hand side of the Most High's throne, waiting till his enemies be made his footstool. All right, it says, "And the woman," which is talking about Israel. See, so it really is talking about Israel. "And she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto the Most High, into his throne." And like I said, in future shows, Lord's will, we're going to go into this a little deeper. It says, "And the woman fled into the wilderness." Now during that time, when after Yahushua was crucified, there was a matter of about another good 34, 35, 36 years that the Roman emperors Titus, Vespasian, and Domitian, they persecuted Israel to the point where they fulfilled that prophecy where it spoke about the desolation, or the abomination of desolation, and they tore Israel up. They tore Israel up to the point where you had Israelites that had to flee into the wilderness, and this wilderness was talking about Africa, the interiors of so-called Africa, or the land of Ham, because the Israelites fled. There's a book called it was written by Rudolph R. Windsor, and from Babylon to Timbuktu. And it was estimated that over 1 million Israelites, black Jews, fled into the interiors of Africa from 65 BC during the time of Pompey all the way into 70 AD when the time of the persecution of Titus, Vespasian, and Domitian occurred. So it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, so-called Africa, where she had the place prepared of the Most High, and that place was America, because when they went up in there, they were basically sold after a period of 1,500 years, roughly, to the so-called white man by the Arabs and the Africans, and brought over here to this side of the world in America. That they should feed her there 1,203 score days. Now that 1,203 score days represented a period of 350 years. All right.